Hi folks, long time no see. Uh, Sorry I haven't done anything on this channel for a wee while. Had to go do my dissertation at uni and stuff like that. It's been jam packed. But I'm excited and raring to go and to start one of the series that I initially wanted to start. So the first kind of idea that I came up with when I wanted to do this YouTube channel was regarding the Book of Questions by Gregory Stock, I believe. Um, and so to kind of begin that, I want to use a PowerPoint presentation. There we go. I think this should be working. I'm going to stick myself into the slideshow bit. Hopefully this works out okay because I'm just going to get right into it. Yeah, so the book of questions, it's basically just a book of questions that are for kind of reflective thought. So let's get into it. So I'm going to be taking questions from Gregory Stocks' book and attempting to answer them. This is obviously just question one, but there's like 300 of them, so lots of content. But yeah, but whilst doing this, I hope to use each question as a kind of tool of reflection. When you ask yourself certain questions, especially pertaining to, you know, your values and stuff like that, it really tells you who you are as a person. And we don't really self-reflect that often nowadays, so I feel like this will be a good start. Uh, Also, the other kind of idea is to practice communicating ideas. As you could tell from my previous two videos, I was full of is and etc etc. So hopefully I can try and reduce that. Every video that I make will hopefully improve how I communicate ideas. If I can do it in a more clear and I guess punctual way. So yeah. Also, I want to kind of develop more confidence in forming an argument. So like I kind of alluded to on my first video, struggle to stick to an argument. I'm kind of more of a bench sitter, I guess. So the idea behind this is to ask a question that will make me kind of pit two ideas up against each other, and hopefully I'll be able to communicate an argument that is strong in some cases, probably weak in most cases. Uh, but yeah, hopefully that's the aim of this series. So the first question I want to talk about, and what this video is going to consist of, is the question of technology has become a part of us. Would you rather lose the use of all motorized vehicles, all telecommunication devices and computers, or one of your hands? So basically, what the question is asking is whether or not is a versus question between technology versus your hand. What would you choose to keep? Uh, so how I'm going to break down this question is I'm going to break down the parameters of the question, what how I'm going to answer the question. I also talk about the definition of all four concepts. I guess I've only put pro and con for the hand, but it's not too hard to define. And also put a pro and con for a couple of pros and a couple of cons for each idea. Then I'm gonna, weigh them up and hopefully provide you with a relatively decent answer. I'm going to suggest an alternative question as well, which may allude to along the lines of only being able to have one out of the four ideas, which I don't know, that might bring in even more interesting thoughts, and my final thoughts as well. Just overall questions that I think would be interesting to answer or ideas that I thought of as I was creating this PowerPoint. So let's get into it, I guess. Uh, so the way I'm going to be answering the question is suggesting the selection of one will make the other universally taken away from everyone. The question in the book is kind of more alluding to you just can't use it. Now, I feel like that might not be as fun, so I feel like creating a question that makes it that it just doesn't exist anymore, it takes the opportunity to use it away from everyone, would be more interesting. So, like, if you choose your hand, the technology will be used, will be removed from everyone, or if you choose technology, then everyone's hand gets chopped off. What a sight that would be! But that's the kind of way I'm going to answer this question. Each aspect of technology will be weighed individually rather than just as a technology branch. Uh, Although I'm going to like ask the question, like I said or alluded to, uh, pitting them all up against each other, just to maybe that will provide valuable insight. And of course, this is just my interpretation of the question. Feel free to discuss other interpretations in the comments or whatever. It's up to you. So yeah, the first aspect of it is motorized transport. So I've tried to really define what motorized transport would be in this regard. So vehicles would be, most people know what a vehicle is, but in this case, we're going to talk about the transportation of goods and people. That is the use of a vehicle. It's removing one thing from point A to point B. And the motorized aspect of it is that it is required to operate using an engine, so some kind of mechanized propellant, I guess. I don't know, that's probably a load of garbage, but the examples I put here are like cars, trucks, planes, boats. Put tractors as well, which I thought is slightly different than the other two, because it's used to collect things, but also has to use it transports a person, but also the goods that you maybe collected while you're out in the field. So I thought that might present another kind of aspect to the question. And just you know, just to make sure other forms of transport can remain if they don't require a motor to operate, such as like sailboats and stuff like that. So yeah, so the pros I kind of generated when thinking about this. Sorry, there's cars going past. I don't know if you can hear that on this. Uh, they have significantly decreased the size of the world, right? So from getting to one country to another is a lot easier, uh, which has innate benefits in itself. It means you can experience things that you might not otherwise be able to experience, or at least you can cram a lot more in to our life than we otherwise thought we could. Uh, of course, with motorized vehicles, a lot of the food we eat comes from all over the world, and we kind of require motorized vehicles to get bananas and stuff like that, things that you wouldn't typically grow, especially in my case, Scotland, from other places in the world. So, it really opens up kind of culinary aspect of it, but just general kind of well-being. A lot of these foods that we tend to require nowadays, especially with people that are on a budget and stuff, do come from other countries. So I feel like that is important to note as well. That also includes like the use of tractors and stuff. It'd be a lot more difficult to even harvest plants if we didn't have motorized vehicles. We would have to go back to the agrarian revolution and utilize older techniques back then. And I kind of alluded to this before, but the time reduction has opened up more time for other aspects of life. So before, we used to spend a lot of our time traveling from point A to point B, whereas now we don't necessarily have to worry about that. We can now make room for other aspects of our life, whether it's producing stuff or whether it's socializing in other means or just working, I guess. The reduction of time because of motorized transport and how much speedier it is than any other form of transport, I feel like that is a net benefit to most people's lives. The cons, though, and I feel like this is a pretty big one, pollution, the amount of vehicles that are in the world, there's millions of cars getting created every year. There's millions and millions of cars in production or being used currently. And this all adds up, a lot of air pollution comes from vehicles. So, I guess that is a con. Would we really miss that if that was gone? Would the earth thank us? I guess is another way. And just by utilizing motorized vehicles, a lot of catastrophes are involved. Car accidents, different events could have gone differently if we hadn't been using motorized vehicles. It's just another tool for people to use that has the potential of killing people. So I feel like that is important to note as well. And of course, this kind of relates to pollution, but the reliance on the fossil fuel industry, big, huge industry that relies on the exploitation of the South, the colonization of places like Africa, Afghanistan, the Middle East, and stuff. A lot of that is reliant and ironically fueled by the fossil fuel industry. Now, these corporations have so much power in society, and they constantly per- perpetuate the idea that we need motorized transport, which isn't necessarily true. I guess that's why we're asking this question. But the effect that has on global warming, the constant reproduction of or the constant production of fossil fuels is killing our planet, and I feel like that has to be noted when we talk about how often motorized transport is required and used and utilized in our society. So that's that, I guess. Now, telecommunication devices, I thought I would break that down because it's not the easiest idea, I guess, to get across. So, telecommunications is a method of using digital signals to distribute information over a substantial distance. So, think of like information going through wires, radio, optical, like fiber optic, or other electromagnetic systems, and any means of long distance communication kind of ties into that. So think like getting stuff through your TV, through like Netflix or stuff like that, or just sending messages to people. That has to go through one of those things, right? Your Wi-Fi also kind of falls into this, and the devices themselves are like things like radios and computers, which is part of its own separate section. But stuff like that, just the use of telecommunications is so widespread and required. So I thought that has to be important. That is important to be defined by itself. I did also note like the distribution of letters would be okay if you did relinquish telecoms. Um, so that would like be the main source of exchanging information, I guess, especially when regarding long distance. Unless you took yourself to the other person's place, then that is probably the fastest means. Uh, so the pros: economic impact. It allows for the communication of better prices. A lot of the information and discussions that happen over telecommunications allows people to organise trade more efficiently, allows people to organise their lives more efficiently. Overall, it's been shown to have a huge economic impact. It's made the world a lot more effective and efficient place. Um, Also, including that, it allows communities to connect with each other despite the distance. Think of like diasporas of like migrant groups or even youth movements that require that close connection, but perhaps they don't have that in their local vicinity, so they need to connect with other people around the world, especially people who are part of a diaspora. Um, it can feel the world can feel really lonely, so having the ability to connect with other people is vital. And just think in general, being able to connect with other people at all, people from other countries, the insight that could bring into your own life, for me, it appears to be deeply valuable. Sorry. Um, and it's also vital in the distribution of media such as films and mass entertainment. So think about how much we require like Netflix and other streaming services and stuff like that nowadays. We just can you imagine a life without widespread media? You'd have to rely on like your dad telling you funny jokes or something at dinner, which would suck. I would know. But yeah, so the cons as well, of course, that's important. I've kind of went a wee bit more political with this, I guess, but gives governments and corporations an opportunity for surveillance. So, unless everything is encrypted, which is also part of a telecommunication device, uh, having it allows the government a kind of means of social control. Um, Also, a kind of device of telecommunications is like social media and stuff like that. So think about how much of our life is reliant on social media, and how much all of our relationships and stuff need that form of telecommunication to operate. So the fact that governments and corporations can get in on that business, you know, I mentioned it later on in the slide, but it can manipulate. You can see propaganda, advertisements. People can steal other people's data, stuff like that. That can really affect groups, especially marginalized groups. And you know that just gives another way in which people can be exploited. Um, in the centre there, I say it results in communities becoming more insular, less social than we initially thought. Now, I feel like this is interesting as well. You know, with social media, um, we don't feel as reliant to interact with other people in our local communities. So, you know, we feel a lot more detached from the world. That can have a lot of mental health aspects to it. You know, it can leave you in worse or wear, I guess. And I feel like the kind of insular nature and the kind of echo chambers that form through um, telecommunications is probably more damaging than it is beneficial, you know. So I did feel like that is important to mention. Now computers, I was thinking about lumping telecommunications and computers together because they're quite similar, but I thought I would separate it. Just why no? Might as well. So a computer is an electronic device for storing and processing data. It can be used to process information quicker than a more analog method. Like think of like counting. It's easier to count on the machine than it is to like count with your fingers. So yeah, and it can also store information on it, such as photos and films, as well as spreadsheets and database. Just any form of information or knowledge can be kept on a computer. So I feel like that's important. The pros, it's incredible for storing memories, but also history. Think about how much history would have been lost um, if we didn't have it stored on computers. Now, of course, computers aren't indestructible, but having these databases of knowledge, it makes it a lot more accessible for people to access information, but it also allows people to just store kind of general memories of their friends and family. You know, it's a lot easier to destroy a photograph than it is to destroy a computer network, you know. So I feel like that is a net benefit, right? Just the protection of knowledge that comes along with computers is pretty valuable. We have utilized computers for near on 100 years, right? Maybe more. For solving complicated problems that require a lot of processing. So think about just the field of physics and how much that relies on modeling utilized by computer programs and stuff like that. We have been able to understand the reality around us by utilizing the power that comes with computers, which is incredible, right? So I think that bites strongly in the field of computing. It can also be used to create media that can entertain others and communicate with others. Well, you can use it to communicate with others. In my mind, when I was thinking about this, is like video games and stuff like that. You can create it on a computer using coding, but those games can allow you to connect with people which you might not be able to connect with otherwise, right? Um, Not to mention just the entertainment value, right? A lot. It makes life a lot better when you've got something to watch, I guess. Um, Cons, I did suggest that it's made people less active. I mean, I know I have. When I was younger, I never had a computer, and I was definitely outside a lot more. But now that I do have a computer, I am always on my arse, basically, utilising it, which I think is bad. You know, we could all be a little bit more active. I've wrote you can be hacked, right? So these things aren't infallible, right? You can get hacked, information can be stolen, it can be manipulated. It's just another place that's out with yourself that can be, once again, exploited. And I did want to talk about the negative of the exploitation of the global south and their creation, right? So computers, everybody wants a computer nowadays. The demand for them is high. Think about how many people in the world are being exploited just through the manufacturing of these computers. You know, people in China, factories have had to set up like suicide nets outside to stop people from jumping off and killing themselves. You know, it's a real problem. And as long as we facilitate the need for constantly having the newest version of a computer, the most up to date version of it, the global south is going to continue to suffer. Now, you could say that this brings economic value to the global south, as it's, you know, creating jobs that wouldn't otherwise be there. But think about who's creating these jobs, why they're getting created, and what's truly the purpose of this. Is it to liberate people, or is it to keep them oppressed? So, food for thought and all that. So, I wrote very clearly hand, which I'm an idiot, but yeah, I don't really need to explain this, but I might as well. So, from your wrist down, right? So, all this bit, all the wee fingers and all that. Now I've kind of jumped the gun a wee bit here and said prosthetics can be fitted. Pardon me. Uh, but yeah, that's just to say, like, as you know, prosthetics can be fitted, so I feel like that's important to note as an alternative. So, pro, like, independence, you can use it to shape the world. So, think about how many things we do daily that requires both hands. Imagine losing one hand, it would make it so much more difficult. We can use it for, you know, like digging, creating things, just general production, right? And you know, a lot of people see production and creating things as being vital to the way their life is run. It gives them meaning. So losing something that aids in the production of something might be a bit difficult. So the independence that comes with having two hands is, you know, solid. Just gives you greater control over everyday life, like I kind of alluded to, you know, cooking, eating, sports, you know, the list can go on. Utilizing both hands is a lot easier than utilizing only one. Uh, so I feel like that's important to note. Uh, it allows you to operate in a way in which doesn't handicap. Oh my god, my grammar is honking. Uh, doesn't handicap you from certain tasks, right? So once again, having both hands makes life a wee bit easier, and it means, like, say you had to put one hand behind you or something, trying to do a simple task like go to the toilet is a lot more difficult. So yeah, oh god, should I put more work into these slides, to be honest. Cons. I kind of wrote, is it bad to lose a hand? Did allude to it earlier, but prosthetics and tech development may be able to improve the function of the hand. You know, as we saw throughout the last couple of decades, people who have lost their hand through birth and stuff like that have been able to operate effectively as if they didn't lose a hand. And you know, as technology continues to thrive, you know, it'll get closer and closer to actually having a hand. So yeah. Also, I guess the idea, you know, we live in a world that makes it harder for people who don't have a hand or have lost a hand, right? You know, we live in a pretty ableist world, right? So if everybody lost their hand, we could develop a world that benefits everyone who only has one hand, you know? Uh, just because it's a disability compared to other people doesn't make it a disability, if that makes sense. Jesus Christ, that guy wouldn't be able to drive a motorbike if he only had one hand. Hope he falls. But if I'm making my point clear, what I'm saying is that we live in a pretty ableist world, And losing a hand isn't necessarily a slight against you. Uh, Although saying that, you do have a lessened ability to produce things in the way that is kind of normal or normative, I guess. So I guess that would make life a wee bit harder. Uh, and if we're being like philosophical, I guess losing an aspect of your body might give you a lessened sense of yourself. You might feel incomplete. Um, Not necessarily saying that is the case for everyone. But I could see that being the case for certain people, right? If they really valued having their hand prior to it, I guess that would have an influence, you know. So here's my answer. I would prefer to keep technology. My ability to produce me isn't really hindered. With the use of prosthetics and technology, it allows me to contribute to society, right? So I can still produce things despite not having a hand if I utilise the prosthetic, but I could also produce things online. I can communicate with people. It doesn't impact the things that are really precious to me. So communicating with friends, family, cooperation with other people, that's what's really important to me. And losing my hand isn't necessarily fundamental to that process. Uh, Also, having a stronger ability to produce, or at least isn't really who I am. I do like to produce things with my hand. I like building things, and I've always liked making things and helping out with people. You know, kind of more fundamental human things, but it doesn't define who I am. I wouldn't look at myself and go, I am a producer, I guess. And even saying that now, I could still produce things. So without a hand, so I don't know. Uh, for me, talking to people around the world, receiving goods from around the world, and be able to store information, it all enriches my life, right? So, utilizing a computer, talking to people miles away, and then receiving items and stuff from all over the world, as the world has got smaller, I feel like our minds have had to open up a bit. We now live in a society where you can talk to someone from one end of the country while receiving something from another end of the country, and you can all keep this information all stored all nicely in your computer. Not to mention the entertainment value that comes with that and stuff. So all of this stuff is more vital to me. So if I lost a hand, I would still be able to do all these things extremely well. I just would be doing it with one less hand, I guess. Eh, Although I did want to mention the caveat, and I guess it's how sustainable technology is. How much pollution is caused by technology, how much people's lives are controlled and manipulated by the corporations and governments that, you know, can control the information flow that comes through our technology. And for me, this is all systemic of capitalism, right? So for me, capitalism would have to go uh, for technology to truly thrive. Um, you know, Capitalism is one of the main drivers of pollution and the destruction of our planet. So that would have to go, and then perhaps technology would be more sustainable. It's also got to be said though that with technology, the building of networks and talking to other people and other world perspectives, excuse me, it allows you to resist better because you have got a bigger pool of people, a bigger pool of information which you can pull from. Although technology has also given capitalists a way of entering the home and controlling aspects of who you are, what you do, who you interact with, etc. So even technology can be used to oppress people. So to get rid of the root of the cause of all these caveats would be to get rid of capitalism, and then technology could be used for the better good, the greater good, I guess. So I did pose a kind of alternative question, and that was regarding, would I rather pick motors, telecoms, computers, or my hand, and you would pick one and you have to get rid of the other. Right, so I suggested that I would pick telecommunications. As you could tell, I value information from all over the world and talking to other people. Um, so that would be vital for me. But also, like, even the negatives that come along with that, I would say are good, right? So allows you to live a more local life. So it would allow you to live a life of more self sustenance, right? So you wouldn't be relying on food from other countries. Uh, I guess you would be able to store information, but the shared knowledge would still come along, and there's other ways to store information as well. And yeah, self sustenance might be harder with one less hand, but sharing techniques amongst people and stuff, the exchange of information would just make life so much easier. So yes, we would live a more local life, but we would still have the connections throughout the world, the perspectives, the unique interests that other groups bring to our world. So I feel like that would just be absolutely dandy. So I guess my final thoughts, just a couple of questions I wanted to kind of pose, kind of ask myself, but also to ask you guys. What does it mean to be you? Right. So at the start of the question, it was technology has become a part of us, right? Do you see technology as being fundamental to who you are? Do you see your hand as being fundamentally a part of who you are? I just feel like that's quite interesting. For me, the hand doesn't define who I am, but the relationships that I build does kind of become part of me. And a lot of my relationships are international, so telecommunications has almost become vital in the formation of myself. So I guess that's something interesting to note. Also, does losing a hand become a detriment to you? Do you utilize your hand that much? Is there ways in which you could change your lifestyle that requires you not to use your hand? Try maybe operating a day without utilizing your hand that much. Uh, I feel like that's quite interesting. Is losing that aspect truly a negative? You know, uh, and then I thought I would pose the question as well, like how much do you need technology? And we all use technology. I would say we use technology too much, but although it's so vital, do we really need to utilize it every aspect of our life? I think I've been checking the stats on my phone, and it's something like 6 to 8 hours I spend on my phone a day. And I'm definitely awake for maybe like double that at most. So that's quite bad, right? That's a lot of my time spent not in the present, which I feel like could be changed. Uh, so yeah, that kind of alludes on to the second part, which should have had a bloody question mark. Can we reduce the amount of technology in our lives? What could we do in the present that would make our lives less tech filled, less reliant on technology? And then could we use our hands more as our ways of producing things that we should really grab by both hands? I guess. Should we be making things more often? Should we be producing things in our spare time? Would that provide us with a better sense of purpose? I feel like that is important as well. Could we, although we might not see the hands as being fundamental, could we just use them more and maybe understand why we need them? I don't know. I feel like that's interesting. And then, I kind of said, which hand would you remove? So, of course, I'm left-handed. So, would removing one or removing the other be more detrimental to you? What do you do with your offhand that you don't do with your other hand, etc. etc. Uh, so yeah, that's my wee slideshow. Let me boost back up into the full screen. Oh god, it's got dark all the way through that. That's quite hilarious. But aye, so I thought that would be quite interesting, and hopefully you guys have enjoyed this as well. I'll probably be doing other ones. Hopefully, I won't be doing it for over 35 minutes. But I really hope this was interesting, inspiring. I enjoyed it. It was really fun to kind of chat about something that I wouldn't have really thought about otherwise. Uh, but yeah, if you have any questions or anything, or if you want to talk about this more, feel free to comment below. Talk to me on one of my social media sites or whatever. And yeah, I hope you all have a good day, and I'll see you next time. Hopefully it's soon. I'll try and make it soon.